Major funding for this program was provided by Humanities DC. Discover the tapestry of our nation's capital.
He was a tremendous influence on the music scene here in Washington.
He came to school suit and tie every day, so you didn't even know he was a musician.
He really had a gorgeous, beautiful voice, but I just knew him as my dad.
He was in his own way, without even maybe even realizing, a mentor.
And everybody loved his singing. He was a fabulous singer.
Is it a sin to fall in love?
Jimmy McPhail started in the church singing years and years ago.
Why must you deny your heart?
Washington, D.C. has been home to music legends Marvin Gaye, Billy Stewart, and many others. Some were homegrown talents, and others were imported. An original crooner who blended gospel, blues, and jazz into smooth elegance, born James McPhail, the oldest of 6, but everyone called him Jimmy. Jimmy's parents, Ellis and Blanche McPhail, moved from Rocky Mount, North Carolina to Washington, D.C. D.C. is where they discovered their son's innate singing talent.
There was better opportunity for my parents because North Carolina at that time was really, you couldn't get a good job, and my father wanted to do better. So he and my mother, at a very young age, came to D.C.
Jimmy's love for singing expanded his popularity at Armstrong High School. It wasn't long before world-renowned entertainers, Dinah Washington, Pearl Bailey, and Sir Duke Ellington included him as a top performer at their shows. The talent and career of this hidden treasure spanned for more than 40 years.
He sang to me lullabies, and when I was growing up, he sang in the shower, he sang all over the place, everywhere. I mean, some people hum, he sang. So it didn't have to be an audience, he just sang.
Jimmy's musical career soared after graduation in 1946. To say that Jimmy was a high achiever is an understatement. Beyond his love for singing, he served as president of the Honor Society, a member of the Glee Club, football team, track team, and lieutenant in the Cadet Corps.
Jackson Lowe was doing Sunday talent contests here in Washington. And so in 1945-46 time period, he had a group called the Armstrong Four say that they wanted to sing on his show. In other words, a quartet in the style of the Ink Spots or the Mills Brothers. And the group came on and they were very good. And McPhail, along with a fellow named Raymond Reeder, were both in that group coming out of Armstrong. And they won. They won their initial show, they won subsequent show, they won the quarterly show, and then at the end of the year, they won the big prize, and nothing really happened then.
After winning the contest, their popularity started to grow. The Armstrong Four would get gigs around town.
When I was at high school with my quartet called the Armstrong Four, we used to work. This was between 44 and 46. We worked around town, and it paid us $5 a piece a night. We thought we were something else, cause. But then I went to Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina.
He loved Shaw University. He loved it. And that's when he really got into some of his singing, his competitions that he was in. That, furthered his cause when he became professional.
I worked in these hotels down there. Had to go in the back door, but it was all right. Made a little money, took it home, or brought it home to my roommates, and we spent the money. And I enjoyed that. And helped open up a radio station down in Raleigh called WNAO. That was an experience. It really was.
Education was very important to Jimmy. He earned his bachelor's degree at Shaw University. a master's in education from George Washington University, and completed graduate work at Minor Teachers College. In 1950, Jimmy competed in the Jackson Low Talent Contest again, but this time as a solo act. For the then 22-year-old, this would launch a career that would last well into the 1990s.
I won a talent contest on radio station WWDC. Jackson Lowe was the disc jockey at that time. And every week we had to do a talent show. And after 13 weeks, we would have the finals.
And he won the quarterly, and then at the end of the year, he won the big prize.
I won the finals, and it gave me an opportunity to work at the Howard Theater.
The big prize was going to the Howard to sing as a solo. He did, and guess who was the house band that week? It was Duke Ellington.
The first job I got at the Howard Theater was with Duke Ellington, and I worked with him for a week there. After that, I got a chance to work with Ella Fitzgerald at the Howard Theater. She turned me on to her agent, and they started booking me. After that, things just started happening for me.
Ellington heard him and quite obviously said, "I want this young man with me."
Sir Duke formed a partnership with Jimmy that elevated his career. The opportunity to perform across the country with Duke Ellington and his orchestra exposed Jimmy's voice to broader and diverse audiences.
He was on television, and Jimmy was the guy that you would see was doing the programs, the sacred concerts there, and Jimmy would be right up in front singing and stuff like that, and clean as he could be. About as clean as he was at Elliott Junior High School when I was about in the 8th or the 9th grade or so.
And from September of 1950 until the time Ellington passed away, Jimmy McPhail was very closely associated with the Ellington Ensemble.
Jimmy proved to audiences that he was born to sing. Among his most memorable performances with Duke Ellington was the live sacred concert in 1965.
It was one of Ellington's major accomplishments, and people really doubted that Ellington was capable of doing sacred music, or they didn't know what he would do, but he did quite a remarkable thing.
Who is the power? Ain't but the one who knows the story. Made little apples that fall from the tree. Birds in the sky, put fish in the sea. Who made the little flowers that give honey to the bee?
I saw tapes of Jimmy singing with Duke Ellington, singing the concert of sacred music. And it was a great piece of music, a masterpiece. And I had the good fortune of playing with 2 orchestras, and we played that concert, the complete concert with tap dancers and everything.
I was fortunate that he allowed me to travel with him when he had to go out of town with Duke Ellington. He did the sacred concert with Duke Ellington. I got to sit in the audience like I was the audience while they were doing their show. Sometimes they were rehearsing, and sometimes it was the real production. And I remember just sitting there and just listening to his voice. It's almost like an out-of-body experience. It was awesome. It was just awesome because it was like he was singing from the heavens above, but he was right there in front of you.
Was an outstanding singer of that genre of music, an outstanding front man. I mean, he had it all. He had the charisma. He could speak well. In front, he was very comfortable in front of the band and in front of the audience and stuff like that.
He had quite a remarkable voice, and he had tremendous control. This was no off-the-street amateur.
In 1950, Mercer Records, owned by Ellington's son, signed Jimmy to their label. His recordings were accompanied by Sir Duke, Billy Strayhorn, and Wendell Marshall. I Wonder Why, I Remember April, No Smoking, and brown suede were the songs recorded, yet they were never released.
Jimmy's material that he recorded for Mercer Ellington in 1950 came as a result of his discovery, and no one's heard those because they've never been released since they were recorded.
Jimmy moved on to record with RCA Victor's label in 1951 with the release of Artificial Leaf, Gee, I Wish, and his most memorable ballad, Bouquet of Roses.
When Jimmy McPhail came up to RCA Victor, they had a session set up for him where they normally did 4 songs, and he was able to complete 4 songs. And from that first session, they pulled off one title called Bouquet of Roses. It was kind of a ballad. It was in the style of Billy Eckstine. It was very nicely produced, and of course, his singing was magnificent. And that came out about October of 1951. And that's the most common record today. If you go look in the secondhand market, you would probably find that record before you'd find any of his other records.
Sending you a big bouquet of roses.
By 1951, a flourishing recording career and performing were pinnacle moments for Jimmy. This was topped off by marrying his childhood sweetheart, Katharine Gant.
They got married in 1951, and they were married till the day he died, and that was 47 years total. But they were actually childhood sweethearts, so they put in way more than the 47 years, but it was 47 years of marriage. They had 2 children. I'm the oldest, and my brother is 6 years younger than I am. And this is a picture of him. He's James McPhail, and he passed away in 2019. So it was just the 4 of us. And so I'm the last of them, and then little Frank is the only grandchild because my brother didn't get married and he didn't have any children.
Unfortunately, I was not able to know my grandfather like a lot of people do. You know, he impacted everyone's lives in a very positive way. My grandfather was a teacher, singer, this and that, but to me, he was just my grandfather.
There's nothing left to do.
It was nice with Duke Ellington. I had an opportunity to see what the world was like, but I also had my job teaching school, and that was the thing that sort of kept me going.
A Renaissance man who balanced his love of family, his art, educating the next generation, and running his own business over the course of 25 years. That was Jimmy. Everything he achieved was done with passion. He put his education degree to good use at Elliott Junior High School. Many students remember him as smooth, stylish, yet a staunch disciplinarian who set classroom rules and practiced tough love.
He was my personal family living teacher. And, you know, I was about 14, 15 years old at Elliott Junior High School. He was one of the smoothest male teachers in the school at that time, by the way.
He was one of those people that we all knew he was a musician, and we knew that he was someone of note. But, you know, here at junior high school, you know, we talking like, you know, we young teenagers, you know.
And my father did not let the boys wear soft shoes. They couldn't wear soft shoes to his class. They had to put on a necktie and hard shoes when they entered his class. Now, he didn't care what they did after they left his class or before his class, but you had to come in there looking like a gentleman.
I never knew about the club, never been to it. He came to school suit and tie every day, so you didn't even know he was a musician. Very professional teacher.
He was one of those teachers that you didn't play around with. You know, I didn't know him that well, but I knew he was one of the teachers when I was at Elliott. And I just did what I could to stay out of his path or just not get in any trouble around Mr. McPhail or any of those cats.
He was just a firm, strict, but well-educated, good teacher. And I learned a lot about history, geography, because I took him 7th and 8th grades.
Back in the 1970s, I had a long-term substitute teaching assignment at his school. Students could not enter his classroom unless they greeted him with good morning, good afternoon, etc. Students could not enter his classroom wearing tennis shoes. Tennis shoes were for gym activities only. Students had to read the newspaper. He told them, if you want to hide important information from Negroes, as we were called back then, just print it in the newspaper. So reading the newspaper became a daily classroom activity. Jimmy was a disciplinarian, but if his students needed shoes, clothes, guidance, they knew they could come to him for help.
Jimmy was one of the guys and one of the teachers in school that looked like he may have played football at one time, and you had no chance, you know. So it was he wouldn't threaten you. He had a great set of teeth there at that time, and all he would do is just smile at you. And you, even at 13, 14, 15, and 16, you even understood. Even you understood it at that time. That no chance.
Jimmy was a legend around town, man. And I didn't meet him until I was in middle school at Brown Junior High School. And my mother and her group, they used to go out and party on the weekends. You understand? And Jimmy McPhail was one of the clubs they went to. But I didn't know, that who Jimmy McPhail was until I got to Brown, and he was doing substitute teaching. And my mother, I think that may have been the third time Mr. Stinson had her up there that month. And Jimmy happened to be there substituting, and he was in the office when my mother came in. He said, "Hey, Maddie." I looked at her. So my mother introduced me to him and said, "Jimmy, this is my son, Harold." And we shook hands, man. He was a cool dude, you understand?
I can remember going to his classroom was just so much fun. And then when I was a little girl living at the apartment that was right across the street from the school, I would run every day at the end of the yard because it was fenced in. And he would come and get me. We would go get a dreamsicle every day. And I loved that. And so I missed those moments because he was so busy. That man had 3 full-time careers consecutively.
I did have 3 careers going at the same time. Teaching school, running a nightclub, and of course, singing on the side. I had a job at the 7 & T Cocktail Lounge. I was making something like $54 a week. But the good thing about it was that when I went out of town and came back, I always had a job. So many young entertainers don't understand that you need to have a base.
In 1959, Jimmy took his career into his own hands by becoming a club owner. He bought the Melody Inn on Bladensburg Road and turned it into his signature nightclub, Jimmy McPhail's Gold Room. There he booked live performances. The Gold Room became the place in Northeast DC where audiences could hear Jimmy sing on a regular.
I would be just driving in my car, riding down Bladensburg Road, and I would see the sign saying, Jimmy McPhail's Gold Room. And I'd say to myself, one day I gotta stop in here just to see what it's all about. People around town had told me who Jimmy McPhail was and that he was a great singer. And then one night I just kind of happened to stop by. I think it was probably like a Saturday night. I just happened to stop by and went in, and there it was, Jimmy performing before the crowd like he always did, and I was hooked.
Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own.
But once he turned it into the Gold Room, he kept things going well into the 1980s.
When I got out of the Air Force, I started a dance band, a combo. I named on combo Bobby Fell and the Blue Notes. And I started performing during that time. I was doing most of the cabarets in the Washington, D.C. area, and that's how I met Jimmy. And we became very, very good friends. When I formed my first dance group in Washington, Jimmy was the first one to give me a big break in playing. And Jimmy hired me to play Friday, Saturday, and Sundays at the Gold Room at his club.
Jimmy, very nice guy. He even came to my home a couple of times, playing music, jamming with my husband, with Ricky. And we used to go to his club a lot.
Whenever we went to the Gold Room, it was usually after a Redskins game. Well, we always went someplace, but we always elected to go down to Jimmy's Gold Room so we can have drinks and talk trash and all that kind of stuff.
Jimmy had a very, very good show there on weekends. He had an exotic dancer also. Dolores was one of the dancers that danced, one exotic dancers that danced at his club. She would be part of the shows that he would do, you know, twice a night. And he culminated each show that he had. He did 2 shows a night at his club on weekends, and he would end up featuring himself as a singer.
It was always crowded. A lot of his friends and, you know, came there, and it was really nice. It was nice. I didn't go there all the time because I thought they were old people coming in there.
The club's live entertainment included a variety of blues and jazz artists. Many evenings, Jimmy could be found adding his vocal prowess to the lineup.
He didn't have a show business look. He had a voice. He had a show business voice. He was a tremendously gifted balladeer. When he sang a ballad, you know, I mean, he could bring, the place would get, some songs he would sing, the place would just almost freeze.
When Jimmy sang, if you were with your significant other or wanted to be or what have you, the songs that he sang made you want to go home and make love.
Jimmy was a great singer. One remarkable thing about Jimmy is his pitch. He would start songs and he would never miss the key of the song.
Jimmy McPhail must have known 20,000 songs, all by memory. Any song that you name, he knew it and he could sing it.
Vocalist Charles Stevens was honored to perform as a soloist at Jimmy's Gold Room at the start of his career. He holds fond memories of his protege.
The evening breeze caressed the trees tenderly. If the club got crowded, the music was right and Jimmy was on, you might not get on that night. Because he would get up and do fabulous stuff. I mean, you can't take it away from him. You know, he did just wonderful music. You took my love, you took my all, so tenderly. We learned from watching the pros. And Jimmy was a pro. Jimmy was a pro.
Performing music was one thing, but when it came to business, Jimmy was remembered as being a shrewd businessman.
And Jimmy paid everybody, and he paid me, and I said something to the effect of, Jimmy, look, man, I was one of your students. We had seconds of contention there, right? And then he got to that posture again where he was just standing there smiling, and at that stage and at the age I was at that time, and at that time I was a lot bigger than I am now and muscular. We just went on and parted. You know, I wasn't backing down, nor was he. He knew that this would be the last time he'd see me. But I really enjoyed working with the guy because he was a good front man and he was a good person to, well, you could learn a lot from him, you know.
Guys would play with Jimmy for a while and then tell Jimmy, said, look, man, I got to have more money. And Jimmy said, no, he wouldn't pay you, no, but X amount of dollars. He wouldn't go any higher than that. And that's how I got, you know, I came in and got, but I was so happy to play with those guys. And man, it was so much fun playing with those guys. You know, it's like one of those things when you got a gig with them guys, you look forward to it, you know?
The entertainment business at that time, it was poverty-stricken, but that didn't matter. It wasn't about money. It was about, we want to do this.
He had quite a few well-known folks come through there. Because what would happen is when they would come to town, they would be typically appearing at the Howard Theater. And after that was over, then it would trickle on down to my father's club. And then my father would get on the phone and he said, Catherine, Isaac Hayes is here, Red Fox here, pick. And so my mother and I get in that car and we would ride over to the club late at night. Look, and sometimes I had on my pajamas with the feet in them.
So when everybody was in there Friday night and Saturday night having a good time and, drinking and enjoying the music and smoking cigarettes, 'cause that was a big thing back in those days. Well, I was the one who came in the next morning to clean all that up.
Following the 1968 riots, after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., many businesses were destroyed. But patrons' love and respect for the Gold Room kept it in business unscathed.
And people have told me since that I was a very significant club. It sustained a lot of jazz performance in Washington from the time Jimmy bought it in the late 1950s all the way through his passing.
He got old and got sick. And then my mother she had absolutely nothing and no interest in that club. Right. So it wasn't like she would step in for him. There was nobody else to step in because my brother wasn't interested. I wasn't interested. And so he kept it for 38 years. And then when he got ill to the point where he couldn't even really do much of anything along those lines, then my mother sold it.
I had my own trio, and we traveled all over.
One of Jimmy's beloved venues was his annual performance at the Cardozo High School class of 1946 reunions. He committed to this prideful tradition throughout the 1980s and well into the 90s.
We graduated at the same year, so that's why he wanted to be with us, because every time we had any programs, he always provided the music. When he would sing that mic, he'd be walking up down, and he would stop at a table or what have you, and pick up one particular lady, and he would sing directly to her, and she would go, ah! Because he was singing directly to her, as if there was no other woman in the room. But Jimmy made her feel like that she was special. Those were the kind of songs that he sang.
Pardon my asking, what's Of course you couldn't.
Roosevelt and Phelps and Armstrong and Cardozo, they're all very close, and the kids had to come in from across town because they didn't have community high schools. The segregated high schools were all in one location, and the kids took the bus and the trolley and they came to that location, so they did really know each other.
Jimmy was had that sort of like dry humor. He would say something, and you would laugh, but everything he said had a meaning to it. And he was saying, not too filtered, too hot and everything. He said, but this is my class. I didn't graduate from Cardozo, but we all graduated at the same time. And Cardozo is my alumni. So he said, as of this date, I am an alumnus of Cardozo High School, class of 46.
1, 2, 3, to your left. Go back, 2, 3, take a half a turn.
Jimmy wasn't feeling too well. He had been sick for a long time, but he never let it bother him. And he was sitting on the edge of the stage and had that mic in his hand.
This was like December of 1997. By this time he had slowed down because he was really having medical problems, and so then he became wheelchair bound. He had the typical ailments that a lot of black families have with the high blood pressure and diabetes. He had diabetes, and he went to dialysis, 3 times a week. The team at the different dialysis centers, they loved him. And he would sing to them. And when he passed away, I didn't realize how he touched so many people.
Jimmy McPhail's career achievements as a professional musician, an exceptional educator, and a successful business entrepreneur left an indelible impact on those he encountered. His significance to DC's music scene cannot be underestimated.
The power of music is so enticing, whether you want to be a performer or you're a listener. When you love music, and shame on the fact that we don't have any more Jimmy McPhail Gold Room.
A lot of people tend to forget the legends who made DC. And Jimmy McPhail is one of those legends. You'll see a lot of people remembering Chuck Brown. You'll see a lot of people remembering Billy Taylor. But you don't see as many people who remember Jimmy McPhail and the contributions he made to life and culture in DC. So I think it's very important to keep that memory, treasure it, and protect it.
And I hope that my career will mean something to someone else, because relatively you're still unknown in Washington, D.C., although I've been singing in this town for a long, long time.
In 70 years, Jimmy McPhail impacted so many lives through his singing, education, business, style, and legacy. He passed away on March 16, 1998, at Howard University Hospital. His final resting place is at Mount Olivet Cemetery on Bladensburg Road, Northeast, Washington, D.C. A golden life, well lived with passion, purpose, and all that jazz. Jimmy McPhail, a treasured musical gem. Now you know his name. Pass it on.
I Did It My Way. That was my favorite song, because he did.
I did it my way. Regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do. I saw it through without exception. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway. But more, much more than that, I did it my way. Yes, there were times, I guess you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up.
Major funding for this program was provided by Humanities DC. Discover the tapestry of our nation's capital.